Now I could spend my holidays on videos galore, or lie on the beach getting sorry and sore, or I could sail the ocean and see another foreign shore. Well, I took my little Kelpie and I sailed the Nullarbor, and I saw the colour changes from Albany to Broome, a pair of white corellas singing out of tune, wildflowers in bloom, and I saw the rusty Hammersleys from a dusty Wittenoom. Chapter 16. Why don't you take your best mate and sail the Nullarbor? I released 2 albums in 1986. The compilation album, All the Best, went gold quite quickly. It was followed later in the year by Mallyboy, which went berserk, number 1 on the general area charts. Mallyboy very quickly sold twice that of All the Best to go platinum at 70,000 copies, and didn't stop until we released another best of album. By then, Mallyboy had gone triple platinum and was still selling. I had arrived, and I'm still trying to equal it. 5 songs from that album will always remain in my show: Mallyboy, Cootamundra Wattle, Galleries of Pink Galahs, Raining on the Rock, and True Blue. Crackanite, the Budgie song, Paint Me a Wheelbarrow are revisited now and again. I'd like to think that songs like that last for a long time because their themes are ageless. Love songs, however, unless they are really special, will date more easily. Look at Waltzing Matilda. It describes things that will always be deep down in our Aussie psyche and will never die: the bush, the underdog, and the campfire. But if my songs are all forgotten in 50 years' time, I won't be around to know it. But where would I be today without True Blue? I honestly don't know. All of a sudden, money came rolling in from record sales of Mallyboy. Up until then, I relied mainly on touring for a living. Phil had always said it would happen, and it did, but not without a lot of work. I had left the easy life of doing 40-minute shows for the clubs and built a street audience. That is, I had created venues throughout the Sydney suburbs west and south of Epping. There didn't seem to be much for me in the east or north. There'd been many victories, but also some humiliating experiences in pubs where people didn't seem to know or want to know what the world outside their suburb was like. It was a bit freaky. At the Sefton Hotel, the locals didn't like the hippie types they imagined who followed me, mainly from the Dural area in Sydney northwest. The publican didn't want me back, as if I wanted to return anyway. I figured if my one-man show worked at the Collingwood Hotel in Liverpool, the North Wollongong Hotel and the Blacktown Inn, I was on the right track. These were all pretty tough venues to play in, so bugger the odd pub that didn't get it. The next step was to expand and spread my wings. After my roadie BJ went back to Tamworth, Tim Kirkland and his mate Gary became my sound and lighting guys in the pubs. Then Tim married Marie and they formed a small agency. I gave them a good start by letting them become my agents. Tim and Marie Kirkland did a good job for a while, but I wanted to have everything under my own roof, and they were determined to have an office in Parramatta. That didn't suit me. Phil Matthews then became more than my publisher, he became my manager. Tim and Marie, while very disappointed by my decision, went on to become successful agents, and I hope they're still doing well with their promotions. This was something I had to do. I bought a wonderful old Federation house in Rawson Street in Epping to be my office and built a 6-car garage out the back. I also bought my own sound and lighting equipment. This meant slowly adding 2 more vehicles to the touring show I had. My fleet of vehicles had grown to an F100 and trailer, plus 2 Toyota troop carriers. By now, I not only carried the equipment, but a crew of 3 roadies and Carol Stannard, who sold the merchandise. It was her suggestion to start a fan club. We called it the Fair Dinkum Club. It was time really to hit the road and sail the Nullarbor again, finding a new audience and some new songs. We headed for the west, making the long journey from Sydney to Western Australia, some 4,000 kilometres. Phil wasn't going to let the opportunity to make a documentary slip by, so he hired a director, whose name I have forgotten on purpose, a cameraman and a sound guy to come as well. That documentary cost me $60,000, and all I got out of it was a bit of live performance footage and some useful stuff for advertising my shows. The documentary was unstructured and useless. None of us had a proper plan. However, my trips to the West was the beginning of my love affair with that great state. I didn't make money on the first couple, but nowadays my shows sell out over there. It was the Pilbara region in the northwest on the way to Broome that captivated me. So much so that I painted a number of landscapes capturing the amazing red hills covered in golden spinifex, interrupted by the small white snappy gums. One of those paintings ended up on the end of the Warrigal album. That trip also inspired 3 songs: West Town, Welcome All to Broome, and Sail the Nullarbor. West Town describes the coastal town of Carnarvon. Back then there was a very uneasy feeling about the place. We arrived at the motel to be met by the owner, who made it known that he hated blackfellas. So much so that he bragged about his bull terrier being trained to attack them. One of the crew had his camera stolen from the troopy, so that didn't help either. There were Indigenous fellows sitting around the streets with beer bottles. All in all, it didn't create a great impression. But there was also a mile-long jetty, which is still there today, that was a delight to walk along, right out into the ocean. I remember an old bloke with his leathery legs pushing an old pram full of fishing equipment along the jetty. I can't remember how the show went in Carnarvon, but the town gave me a good song, and I'm pleased to say that Carnarvon is a much better town today and quite a food bowl for the West. Further north, we left the film crew at Karratha. Then a successful show at Port Hedland, the town covered in red dust. We continued on to Broome, a town full of surprises. I performed in a motel up there. During the day, Mary Kay and I went wandering around the town and met a local Indigenous girl who wasn't impressed at all with the so-called progress that was proposed. Welcome All to Broome was born. That night, Mary Kay woke up to see an Aboriginal kid in our room. By the time I woke up, she had very forcefully told him to get out, and he banged his head on the window as he hurriedly made his escape. Nothing was stolen. Boomerang Cafe was released in 1988. It was nowhere near as successful as Mallee Boy, but to me, the songs from Western Australia made it special. There's nothing to do in West Town. Sink a mitty down the pub, take a woman home to your caravan, but carry a mulga club. And watch where you walk in your wobbly boots, or the nights will rob you blind in West Town. I see the dance of the egret, pelican ponder, take a walk on wrinkled sand and wonder, hard to imagine floods and summer thunder in West Town. And there's nowhere to go in West Town, take a drive in a blistered car, but you won't get away from yesterday, they'll want to know who you are. Or the shimmering heat will burn your mind, it's wild and rusty red in West Town. Now that I was fully self-contained and not relying on other sound or lighting systems, it was time to go back to the bigger venues of the clubs and theatres with my own gear and a big backdrop. The club scene had dried up for many acts because so many performers were just singing the same old covers. The incestuous system developed by the club agents virtually killed the scene, and the new drink driving laws probably didn't help. I didn't charge the clubs, but simply took the door. The ticket sales were often dubious, but what could I do? If the club wanted to let their mates in for free, we couldn't do much about it. The good thing was that there was no theatre hire fee, so that probably made up for it. Theatres were expensive to hire. All in all, I owe a lot to the licensed clubs for giving me so many venues to perform in. Over the next 10 years, I tried all sorts of things to keep myself and the show fresh, other than the new songs I wrote, of course. Pixie Jenkins, the fiddler, came on board and influenced the sound of my concerts to a big degree, but more than that, he brought more comedy. He played the character of a naughty little boy, which gave us an Abbott and Costello effect with a lot of banter. Teach Me to Drive on the Family album has to be the best example of that. Then there was Paul Burton on upright bass, replaced then by Joel Smith on fretless bass, and Gary Steele on piano, accordion and keyboards. Then it got quite out of hand, taking on board Kelvin Nolan playing guitar and Randall on drums, and then another bass player, Lindsay Butler Jr. I took that group to London in 1996 to give it a go. What a waste of money. I was much more successful in 1998 when I returned to England with my one-man show. I guess it was all about finding my limitations and learning from experience, but it was a costly exercise. In the end, it proved that I'm not inspired to write about other countries. I wrote a love song in London that has never been requested by my audience since it was released, and that's the litmus test. The soul of Australia is always a part of my best songs.